What's going on, guys? MariK here, back with episode 8 of our History of the Dragon Ball Super card game mini-series. After the release of Colossal Warfare, we got one of the coolest products I've ever seen in a TCG. It was the ultimate box for Dragon Ball Super. It had new leaders, we had new battle cards. It was an awesome, spectacular, it wasn't as great as the anniversary box, but at the time it was fantastic, and there were quite a few cards that had an impact on the meta, had an impact on competitive play itself, and made a lot of cards that weren't so good much better to play than I previously thought. Red got a new leader, an explosive power Kefla. She had a similar ability to the Colossal Warfare Goku, where if you discarded a Universe 6, you got to draw 2 cards. On her Awakened side, you could choose a Universe 6 in your hand and place it in the drop area, and your leader and any Universe 6 battle card gained 5,000 power and double strike. So, pretty cool little card you could play. It worked well with Veggies, because half the Veggie package was Universe 6, but you kind of played with the little weenie guys a lot. And so that extra 5,000 didn't really do a whole lot. I still think the Kefla leader was better, but this was definitely a cool leader to go with the overall theme of the Ultimate Box. Then we got Ghost Combo Gotenks, who was just a terrible attempt at Gotenks support. It wasn't even for the correct leader color. When you comboed with it, if your leader was red and you had 4 or less cards in your hand, you got to play a Ghost token. So you comboed with it for 1 energy just to get a Ghost token out. And granted, playing it for 4 energy just for double strike wasn't really worth it either, but your leader had to be red. Again, this was one of those cards that, like, the only real benefit to using it was with, I don't know, the Soul Unleashed Son Goku, or maybe the Vile Prince Vegeta. Other than that, there were no leaders that really benefited at all, or helped you have anywhere near 4 or less cards in your hand. And what little this actually did for a Gotenks deck is it really just gave an extra Ghost token, and that just wasn't worth it at all. Then we had Virtuous Strength Gohan, was one of the few Gohans that was not a Sun Gohan in the name title. He was a 3-drop that had a similar ability to the Ultimate Gohan from Union Force. He did the burn damage, and he could attack battle cards in active mode if your leader was red. A cool ability, however, 1 damage is not 2, and it doesn't really go as far. It was, however, a fantastic card to be able to run if you were doing like a burn-esque type deck, especially with some of the newer support, and you could do it with the Earthling support as well, since Gohan is Saiyan and Earthling. We also had other cards like the Vegeta GT that did burn damage when it KO'd a battle card, and then there's, of course, somewhat of a burn archetype coming out in Assault of the Saiyans that this card might work well with, since it's all red stuff anyways. So it'd be really cool to see this Gohan actually see some play. He kind of saw a little bit of play when the Ultimate Box came out, but it still wasn't nearly as good as the Universe 7 Gohan from the Tournament Pack. Then we got one of my favorite cards from the Ultimate Box. It was Umbral Blade Dabura. This was more of like a finisher Dabura card. When you played it, and if you had Evil Wizard Bobbity in your battle or leader area, he gained dual attack and 10,000 power, so he's a 35,000 double strike dual attack card. That was insane. And he worked really well with the Bobbity leader, because you had him, you had the 3-drop Bobbity from Union Force that acted as Deadly Defender. It was just kind of a cool, gimmicky little theme deck that I played, and I actually got first place with the deck too. I was really surprised to be able to win with this deck because it was theme-based. But it was definitely a lot of fun, and with all this red support we've gotten since I built that deck, I'm definitely looking forward to building it again with some of the World Tournament 2-drop Dabura promos. This was definitely my favorite card from Red, and possibly one of my favorite cards from the entire set. We had Rampant Evil Majin Buu. He was a great 5-drop target with Deflect that you could use with the Union Absorb Majin Buu from Union Force. And when you played him, if your leader card was Majin, you got to draw a card and switch one of your energy to active mode, and he gained triple strike. So he was able to do a little bit more damage than the Grand Evil Absorption Majin Buu. He didn't require a Gohan. He already had Deflect. You could put Barrier underneath him via the Union Absorption. And he gave you an extra energy to untap to be able to attack with him. And then you could even combo the or EX evolve the Majin Buu from Crossworlds on top of him, and he would gain the 30,000 and be able to attack again for another triple strike. I loved this card, and with Majin Buu decks, I usually play the Majin Buu leader with it anyways. I know a lot of people played pretty much every other leader because they thought Majin Buu was a bad leader, but I personally liked the Majin Buu leaders, both of them that we got, and this is a fantastic card. I run it in the Majin Buu deck just because it gives me an alternative option if, say, I need to deflect, or if I need the triple strike instead of the double strike, if I don't have a Gohan. It adds so much flexibility to a Majin Buu deck, and it's red, so it fits the theme perfectly. The last card in red was Capricious Destroyer Champa. Each color got one of the gods from one of the universes to go along with them. Champa obviously was going to go with red. When you played him, if your leader was a god or Universe 6, you got to choose 2 battle cards, 9,000 or less power, and KO them. A extremely mediocre and ridiculous ability, 9,000 or less. Now, granted, we do have more cards now that are less than 5,000, but it was just one of those things, like, they didn't want you to let you be able to pop 2 different cards with energy cost of 10,000 or less because they gave you way too much flexibility early on. But 9,000 or less, they may as well just say choose 2 of your opponent's battle cards that energy cost 1 or less and KO it. That would have at least been a little more consistent with the wording. Yeah, I don't really see how he supports either a God or a Universe 6 deck. He is both, but his ability is just lackluster for him to actually have much impact or much of a support role in either of the decks. Blue's leader was Explosive Power Vegeta, and he had the Warrior of Universe 7 trait, thankfully. He also had a permanent set. If you had 3 or more Universe 7 in your energy area, he gained 5,000 power. Not super great, but interesting because it went along with the ability of the leader. Now, when you attacked, you had to choose 1 card in your energy and add it to your hand, and then you could choose up to 1 card in your hand, add it to your energy. So it gave you a constant open energy every turn, and it also allowed you to place cards in your energy, which not only made it so that they would be safe from your opponent's hand destruction effects, but also allowed you to be able to go, hey, I actually kind of need this card now, and swap it back to your hand. That way you can play it on that turn or wait until your next turn to play it. Fantastic leader. This leader actually saw a great bit of play when he came out. He was competitive for a little while anyways, and there was just so much you could do with him. Obviously, you had to have some Universe 7 support to be able to trigger his permanent and his draw ability on the Unawakened side, but it wasn't too hard to fit a few cards in, and really, he didn't have to fit a Universe 7 theme. He was just a fantastic blue leader, and you could play him with a lot of other archetypes as well. Next up, we had Awe-Inspiring Intimidator, Super Saiyan Blue Vegeto. This was easily the best blue card in the entire box. This card was used in so many decks during the time that a lot of this stuff was competitive. And even now, this card is still a good card to run with blue leaders if you were planning to kind of stall to a certain point, or you plan on reaching a certain amount of energy. He was basically the better precursor to the Deadly Defenders. When he was in rest mode, he gained barrier, and your opponent's cards could only attack the leader. So he had a bit more of a restriction. You did also get to draw a card if you played him when you had 5 or more energy. I know a lot of the times when I played him, I did not have 5 energy, so I kind of missed out on the draw ability. But for what he does and what he accomplishes, it is well worth playing him on 4 energy, even if you don't get that extra draw 1. This card is also fantastic with the set 6 Vegeto support that we got. Since he is a blue Vegeto, you can just charge him, and then you can play him via the energy mechanic that the archetype revolves around. And so I'm really glad that when this box came out, you know, me and my buddies, we got a case of them, so we had 4 foils, and it was kind of like, hey, so here's the stuff I want foils of. And for me, I wanted, foils of the Vegeto, foils of the Trunks, foils of the Goku Black, and the Damacy. That's all the stuff I really cared about. And so I was able to get all 4 foils, and then the card jumped up in price because it jumped up in playability, and it was in just about every deck that was running a blue leader at that time. And it was just a fantastic card, and I'm sitting there going, well, I didn't mean to fuck you guys over, I just wanted it because it was Vegeto. And of course they weren't mad about it. And now the card has dropped down to less than what it originally was when the box first came out. But nonetheless, a fantastic card, one of the best cards of the box, and still a very viable card in the competitive format to this day. Then, speaking of the Trunks card, we had Determined Time Leaper Trunks. This was another one of my favorite cards. First of all, just the art was really dope, and on the foils with that shine where he's about to sheath the sword, it's just the foiling on that card is so fantastic. I personally think this is the best 2-drop Trunks that you can play. We did get a few other variants between of course, the newer championship pack and other promos, but they all do kind of the same thing. And so I kind of just like this one better, not to mention I already have 4 foils of this one, so I may as well stick with it, and it has the best art. But there are so many 2-drop Trunks that are able to do the exact same thing. The only difference being, like, those ones already are at 15, and this one gains 5 when he attacks, so really not a whole lot of difference, and I just feel like the ability to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and choose one just kind of seems to be a little more beneficial, but nonetheless, fantastic card for a Trunks archetype. Really not a good card at all otherwise. Maybe you could use it for the new Trunks support in Assault of the Saiyans, maybe, but that's assuming that you could even find room in a deck that's already crowded for space enough as it is. Then we had Nightmarish Scythe Goku Black. This was the successor to the Terror Scythe Goku Black that we got in Crossworlds. That card was a 3-drop green at 15,000, where this is a 3-drop blue 15,000. Makes all the difference in the world, because you can play it with the rest of the blue archetype. You don't have to worry about your energy as much. And it gets the same ability if your leader is Goku Black or Zamasu. You can play 2 Shadow tokens. Now, the Terror Scythe didn't care who your leader was, so that's kind of a little bit of a bonus there if you were trying to play, like I did, play some cheeky wish stuff. But the upside to this one is, while the Terror Scythe Goku Black, you could choose a card in your hand and put it in the drop, and you could search your deck for a Zamasu. This one does not have that search ability. However, it does trade that ability in order to give itself barrier, which up to this point was fantastic support for a Goku Black deck. Because not only did it give you your tokens, but it also gave you an evolved target that had barrier and could protect itself. When playing the Goku Black deck, you really couldn't afford to get yourself to enough energy to be able to play an evolved target and be able to evolve it in the same turn. And until we got Countdown to Destruction with the Anniversary box, this was pretty much the best option we had. But definitely not a bad option at all, given the lack of support up until this point. Then we had his counterpart, Undying Lynx Zamasu. This was basically a Zamasu version of the Joyful Strike Goku Black Rose that we got in the Union Force Tournament Pack set. Instead of it being a 6 cost, it was only a 4-drop, and instead of having Double Strike, it had Indestructible. But otherwise, it was basically the same ability. If your leader was Goku Black or Zamasu, you had 5 or more energy, you could crit 2 damage and activate 4 of your energy. Didn't really see the point in it. It gave you a Zamasu that was an evolved target, I suppose, that had Indestructible, but so did a lot of other Zamasu targets. And again, while it was a cool ability, at 4 energy, it doesn't really have as big of an impact, because while you can play another card, there wasn't really a lot of chance of you getting to play something as impactful as you could with the 6 energy provided by the Joyful Strike. You could, however, play him, get your 4 energy, and then be able to play, like, the Super Saiyan Blue Vegeto. But, again, I'm not really sure that that was worth it. I don't think I really played this Zamasu too much. I did run him in my build, but I think more or less he just ended up being really shiny, really pretty energy. Then lastly, we had the God of Destruction for Universe 9, Indiscriminate Obliteration Sidra. He was an interesting card. He was kind of played a little bit here and there in the mono blue builds and the blue-green decks that were kind of sweeping through the meta in set 4. he's got blocker, which isn't terrible, and when you played him, you could crit your own life, so it gave you an extra card to add to your hand. You could help awaken, and you got to KO a battle card up to the number of energy you had. So his potential to be able to KO battle cards only increased the later and later in the game you played him. Like I said, he did see a decent bit of play, competitive-wise, for a little bit. I don't think he was super detrimental to any of the strategies. I think it was just kind of an option to be able to get rid of a battle card while providing you a little bit of defense with the blocker as well. Then we got my personal favorite leader, Explosive Power Son Goku. I really liked this leader as a Universe 7 leader. I don't know if I liked it as much as I liked the Gohan, but for Bond 1, when you attack the leader, you get to draw a card, and you gain 5,000 power. So you just had to have one Universe 7. And if you played with Universe 7 deck, more than likely you were going to have a 1 cost on your very first turn. On the Awaken side, if you had 2 during your turn, he gained 5,000 power in Double Strike. So he gained a little bit extra power, a little bit more damage potential he could put out. The art on this card was really nice too, and the foiling just was great on all of them, really. But I don't know, there's something about this particular Goku leader that I actually enjoyed running, and I usually don't run Goku leaders at all. Then we also had one of my favorite Universe 7 cards to play alongside this leader. It was Last One Standing Son Goku. You got to, as soon as you played him, you got to KO a battle card, because you could do it once per turn. And during the turn you played him, if you had 9 or more Universe 7 in your drop, he gained 10,000 power, triple strike, and his attacks couldn't be negated. So 35,000 before combos. It was easily just one of the most fantastic finisher cards. And the fact that his attack could not be negated meant that your opponent couldn't play negates. They could still block, but obviously you were going to just blow up the blocker with the activate main before they even had a chance to do so. This was always my finisher for Universe 7. I really do like the Gohan stuff, but the Gohan leader, or the Gohan battle cards rather, it takes some support to kind of set up the combo for that battle card, whereas this Goku just needs the stuff in the drop area, which is easy to do, especially if you're running the Gohan leader. With the Ultimate Box, we also got a little bit more cell support. One card, really. It was Vile Replication Cell. He was another 5-cost target. And when you played him, if your leader was an android, you got to draw 2 cards and play 2 Cell Junior tokens, which kind of made sense since this is the very first time that we actually got tokens for the token decks. And so, of course, they were going to throw in one for Cell as well. Now, being able to draw 2 cards was really nice. And if you wanted to kind of go through the Cell chain, you could go straight from the 3-drop to this card, just kind of to give yourself a little bit of extra draw power and to give a somewhat decent-sized body to hit them with. But you could also, if you didn't have, say, you milled them, or say they're in your life or something, if you went to Union Evolve, or Union Absorb, and you went through the 5-drop, and you were going for the Perfect Force Cell, bam, he's not there. Vile Replication was a not as good of a target, of course, but definitely a worthwhile one if you had no other options left. And like I said, that 2 extra cards really kind of comes in handy, and the tokens serve as an extra super combo as well. Then we had Deathless Warrior Brawley to go with the OG Brawley support that we had. You could evolve him for 3 green energy, and evolving him into a Brawley with an energy cost higher in your hand, the evolve cost was decreased by 2 green. So that allowed you to be able to play it for only 3 when you evolved on top of it. And when you play this card, if your leader was Brawley, your opponent had to choose a battle card, KO it, and if they did not, they had to discard 2 cards instead. So, really helpful card that went along with the theme. Did see a decent bit of play when Brawley decks picked up here and there, and we'll probably see a lot more play since we got the recent support for Brawley in the Anniversary box, and with the coming of Assault of the Saiyans as well. Then by far the most used card for myself out of this box was Limitless Energy Android 17. A fantastic card to go with the Android support. You got to reduce the energy by 1, so he's a 3-drop 30k that KOs a card, has blocker, has barrier, and once your leader was awakened and at 4 life, he gained that additional 5,000 power, so a 25,000 blocker that had barrier is ridiculous, especially when you were to combo it with cards like King Vegeta before they did what they did with the Revenge ruling. or even just your super combos. Like, he was a fantastic blocker, served his purpose a lot, and to just be able to come out and KO any battle card is an extremely helpful ability as well. Then we had Elegant Assistance Helis, one of the best super combos in the game. Had a similar ability to the Hoi super combo, except if your leader card was a God or Universe 2, and your life was 4 or less, you had to choose a card in your hand, drop it, draw 2 cards, and gain the 10,000 power. I kind of wish you got to draw before you discarded, because there were a lot of times where I'm like, well damn, I drew worse than what I had, or I could have used this to go with what I discarded, etc. But it was a fantastic super combo that you could use with any leader that was a god. For me, specifically, that fell under the category of Zamasu and Goku Black, and the card does not disappoint. It is kind of somewhat counterproductive that it's green, but of course, I'm one of those people that I will never charge one of my super combos for any reason whatsoever, so it doesn't really matter to me one way or another what the color is. Then we got more Universe 11 support with Explosive Power Jiren. When he attacked, you could choose a Universe 11 in your hand, drop it, draw 2 cards. On the Awakened side, he gained, if you had 9 Universe 11 in your drop, and you sent them to your warp, he gained Quadruple Strike for the duration of the turn. So I kind of feel like during the turn you use this ability, you wanted to pretty much combo every single thing in your hand, all for this one attack, and hopefully you'd have the energy for like a battering laser if you needed it, although that is no longer the case. But either way, regardless, you would dump your entire hand, because Quad Strike, if they're at 4 or less life, they're not living that. And if you combo your entire hand, they're going to have to do the same thing as well. Up next, we had Indomitable Super Saiyan Son Goku Jr. This is one of the first sets, well, not really a set, it was one of the first instances where we got more support for the Goku's Lineage archetype. He was kind of interesting. He wasn't really that useful. If your leader was Lineage and your life was 2 or less, he gained Swap 8 for 5 yellow energy. So you would have to play him and then maybe Awaken and then reset your energy and have enough. I don't know. It just didn't really seem ideal to play, because you'd still have to play him, and then he doesn't even have barrier himself, so he's going to have to sit there and wait until your next turn when you can tap 5 energy to be able to swap him for one of your 8 drops. It just didn't seem ideal at all. And it felt like there was much better support for the Goku's Lineage archetype than to play something like this one. Then we got more Chilled support with Space Pirate Chilled. When you played him, if your leader was any Frieza clan, you got to mill the top 3 cards of your deck, and then choose a Frieza clan in your drop area, or if there was one, then you get to draw a card and play 2 Chilled tokens. Now, the Chilled tokens were kind of garbage, unless you had the 5-drop Chilled from Union Force on the board, but I guess it kind of went along with setting that up to give you the extra tokens, along with the leader giving you tokens, for the point when you drop the 5-drop, and then you can abuse the tokens with its ability. It was kind of a cool little card to support the archetype, but unfortunately, Chilled was one of those archetypes that needed a lot more than just 1 or 2 cards to actually make it playable in really any environment at all. Then we got Elite Bloodline Cooler. This is one of my favorite cards, especially for the art. And just because I liked Cooler as a character, and his final form that he had in the Revenge of the Cooler movie was just so freaking cool, and so much better than the Golden Frieza we got in Dragon Ball Super. His permanent had, if there are 3 or more clan in your drop area, you got to reduce the energy cost by 1, so he's a 3-drop. But that still didn't really give him a whole lot of playability. His once return just said when you attacked, you could mill the top 3 cards of your deck, and there's a Frieza clan, switch him to active mode. So, like, he could attack twice, but he didn't have crit, he didn't have double strike, he didn't do anything when he attacked, so it was just kind of, I don't know, it didn't feel as satisfying to actually run it with the already existing Cooler archetype. I do want to revisit some kind of a Cooler deck, maybe with the Cooler leader, maybe with more of the yellow support that we got in Assault of the Saiyans. If we can use some of the generic stuff, maybe I can make the deck work. But as it is right now, Cooler just does not have near the support to really make him playable, kind of the same way the Meta Cooler deck has suffered. Then, of course, it wouldn't be yellow without a Frieza card. We had Frieza, Obsession of the Clan. It was another card that I really didn't feel like it had much place in any Frieza deck in particular. If your opponent's card attacked, if your leader was Frieza Clan, you got to discard a different Frieza Clan and negate the attack and the skill for the turn. But he was a 4 cost to play. He only had 20,000 power. He just didn't do much. And he kind of forced you to have to negate. And since his ability was an auto, you would have to negate the first attack anyways. So, it just really... I didn't really see a whole lot of point in playing it. I did consider playing it in a Frieza Wish deck with the Frieza Wish leader and the Desire extra card. But it just didn't seem worth it to play. Especially since that card could get much better Frieza cards. There's the Tournament Pack Mecha Frieza. There's the Mecha Frieza from Set 1. Deadly Defender, of course. There's a few promos as well. There was just so many better targets that you could pick to play running a Frieza deck than to play this one. Then we had Universe 11's God of Destruction, Clownist Destruction Bell mod. He had Barrier and Double Strike, so he had a good bit of offensive potential and the Barrier to protect himself, I guess because he's a god. I think all of the gods, I know Sidra had Barrier as well, I believe. No, he had Blocker, so I don't know what I'm talking about. When you played him, you got to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you got to add 1 to your hand. If you chose not to add any to your hand, then you got to KO a battle card in rest mode. Not really a super great ability. Actually, the Sidra would be a better card because you could just KO a battle card. You didn't have to play the extra energy for it. And just, I don't know, the ability seemed really lackluster. He did have Double Strike, so he had some damage threat going there, but really all the God of Destructions in this box just seemed really lackluster with the exception of Heli's, and that's because she just became one of the best super combos for any deck that was running a God leader. Then, while we had 4 of the most powerful characters in the Tournament of Power for the colors for the leaders, for Black, we had Zeno himself, and he had a few interesting abilities. You couldn't include cards in the deck that didn't have Universe as part of their special trait. So, unlike the Goku from the Tournament of Power, you could still run extra cards, but you just couldn't run any battle cards that weren't Universe in some capacity. And all of those Universe cards had no specified energy cost as well, so you could run a multicolored deck similar to the Warrior of Universe 7 trait that like the Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta had. And when he attacked, he also milled 2 cards from the top of the deck. So, kind of fueled a little bit for Overwhelm if he decided to run it, assuming there was any Overwhelm that had a Universe in the tag. I don't think we've gotten anything since then that has, but in the case that we do, it would be kind of like decent support for it. And then on the Awakened side, when you had 10 cards in your drop, you could send them to Warp, and your opponent had to choose 2 cards in hand and discard them. So a really, really, really lackluster leader with just no good skills for the most part. The card art looked great, having the two Zeno twins there, but honestly, I could not find a reason to build this leader, and I couldn't find any benefit to running him over any other leader that you would choose. Forced Absorption Demigra, on the other hand, was a fantastic 1-card support for the Demigra decks. If your leader was a Demon God and you had 15 or more black cards in your Warp, you got to choose all of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring Barrier and combo with them, and that's a lot, especially since she's already 30,000 and gets the Triple Strike. It would get around any defenses you had on your opponent's battle cards, with the exception of the Zamasu's indestructible cards, because they just can't leave the board at any point in time. But this battle card with the Demigra leader was actually terrifying, and a good friend of mine plays this deck, and it's one of those cards that you want to see almost anything else on the board, even if it gives you a hard time, because this one pretty much just punches you in the face, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. Then we had Forced Ejection Master Saiyan. Now this card was a card that affected the meta ridiculously, especially combined with the explosive power of Vegeta. Basically, when you had less energy than your opponent and you did charge during the turn you played this card, you got to choose an opponent's energy and send it to their Warp. Now, he only costs 1 energy to be able to Overwhelm, and in my opinion, trading 1 energy for 1 turn is so much better than allowing your opponent to put more shit into play and be able to take advantage of having more energy than you. Now, they did kind of not really change the ruling, but more clarified it, that your life had to already be different before playing this card, before activating the leader's ability. They didn't want the ability to trigger with the conditions being met somewhere in the middle of the ability's resolution, because once the auto has already triggered, it is thereby specifying whether or not once the ability triggers, it's already saying whether or not the requirements have been met for the ability to go off. Still a pretty viable card in my opinion. I kind of like to run it in my Mass Saiyan deck. I also like to consider it for side decks, especially with some of the other decks that people are running, whether it be the like Ramp Beerus or the Ramp Goku Black and Zamasu stuff. This would actually be a good counter against those decks. Just don't tell anybody that I said that. Then we had Smiling Madness Toa. This was actually my personal favorite Toa card out of all the ones we've gotten. It has just overall the best art. The leader is arguable. It's debatable, I suppose. The Awakened side, the foiling is fantastic. But just these full art cards that we got in this set look really phenomenal as well. She's actually an EX a Xeno Evolve target on top of a Toa. Comes with double strike, and she lets you take one of your opponent's battle cards, 3 or less, and gain control of it. So a lot of support for Toa that basically says, "Hey, I like that card that you have. Let me get that from you." It's a shame that she does have to be played with an Android leader, and you can't play her with her own leader that we finally got, especially since that leader is much more fun to play than either of the Mira leaders we got, and you're not really going to play this or any other Toa Mira support in like an Android deck or a Cell deck. Then it just wouldn't be right for us to have a Toa support without having Mira support with Force Destruction Mira. He too is a Xeno Evolve, but this time with Triple Strike, and if your leader was Toa or an Android and he had 10 or more black in your warp, your opponent had to choose 3 cards in their hand and send them to the warp. So I don't understand why the Toa specifically said it had to be a Mira leader or an Android leader, a Toa or an Android leader, whereas this one says a Toa leader or an Android leader. So I'm not really quite sure why you couldn't play that one with Toa, since this Mira also specified the same thing. I guess it doesn't really matter too much in hindsight, but I would like to build a deck that revolves around running most of the Toa support and taking your opponent's battle cards, but I would prefer to do it with the Toa leader that actually has pretty decent abilities, whereas both the Miras are just kind of like tier 3 decks, maybe even tier 4 at most. Then lastly, we had Topo Unleashed. You would expect him to have been a yellow card, since every other bit of Universe 11 is also yellow. But this time around, he's black. He's got EX Evolve, Barrier, and Blocker, and we evolved into a card. If your leader was a Universe 11, and he had 8 or more Universe 11 in your drop, you had to draw 2 cards, and he gained Double Strike and Crit. So Double Strike Crit with Barrier is a lot. It's a lot coming at you all at once. Again, it was kind of weird that he was black instead of yellow, but since the energy cost to EX Evolve him was non-determined, you could use any energy to be able to do so. I don't know that I would really bother playing this card. Like, the ability's kind of nice, but even so, with everything else that comes with the Universe 11 support, I would probably be trying to focus on either of the big, stompy Jiren battle cards. Around the same time as the release of the Ultimate Box, we also got a new BCC card in Scrambling Assault Sun Goten. Had a great ability to be able to look at the top cards of your deck, add one to your hand, and he was Goku's lineage, so he was a swap target. The only downside is he did not have swap himself, so you couldn't use him to kind of further your chain. So while I did run it initially, I didn't use him as much as I could have. It wasn't until people started running it with the blue-yellow deck that was already doing stuff, and then the Goten, and you would just get more and more cards in your hand. It was just really stupid, and a really shitty way for them to abuse the card meant for a completely different type of deck than what they were using it in, and then ultimately people like me that tried to play a legitimate Goku's Lineage deck didn't really get to use him that much. And now, of course, we get to suffer with losing our beautiful super rare Bardock as well. We also got our very first champion pack in 2018 around the same time. Came with Glory Obsessed, Prince of Destruction Vegeta. This was the best Majin Vegeta card we ever got, and one of the best red cards we've gotten as well. He got to attack twice. He could attack active battle cards. He gained the extra 10,000 power. Like, this was a phenomenal card for red decks. Specifically, you could run it with the Pan leader. I like to run it with the Vegeto leader because since he is Vegeta, you can take advantage of the energy stipulation with everything being red, green, and blue to be able to ensure that you could play him at any time turn 3 and later. This card actually ended up being the most expensive from the championship pack, although initially it started out only being like a $5 card, while Trunks was about $20. Their roles kind of reversed at some point. I guess the Vegeta was seeing a lot more play, and so the Vegeta bumped up to about 20. The Trunks dropped down to around 5. I'm grateful that I didn't pay cash for any of the shit I actually got for those cards, because this game's value, what is deemed valuable for certain cards, is just, it's so ridiculous. It literally changes by the day. It changes faster than I change the wallpaper on my phone. Then, speaking of that Trunks, we had Trunks Hope at Hand. This was one of my ultimate favorite cards. The art is fantastic. I love the coloring and the foiling that they did for these championship cards. And this one really, really helped out the Union Force Trunks archetype a lot. It allowed you to play the 4-drop Vegeta a lot more consistently, and it also allows you to play the 6-drop Evolve Constant Hope a lot more consistently as well. The main ability that allowed you to do so was that you got to reduce the energy cost of the Trunks by the blue energy, making it basically an evolve target for 2, and then at that point you could just be able to play that so much earlier on, and honestly it's just one of the most fun decks to play once you have all the Trunks cards that you need set up in that deck. Green kind of got the short end of the stick with this set. You got Vegeto, Super Warrior Reborn, one of the coolest Vegeto cards we've gotten, had a great ability, but its requirements were a little restrict and a little unconventional as well. Not only did you have to run it with the green Vegeto leader that didn't support the Vegeto archetype like the red one did, you also could only use its ability once your leader was awakened. So, while granted you're probably not going to be able to play it that early on anyway, since you have to have at least 3 energy to be able to use his ability, but to be able to play him and do all that while playing that green leader was just so unconventional that it really wasn't viable at all, and this card was worth almost next to nothing aside from the fact that it was a championship promo. Now, since we got some of the extra support for Vegeto in the anniversary box with Polymorphic Fusion and the Blazing Technique extra card, the deck is a little bit more consistent. It at least has better potential with the extra card able to get rid of almost anything that's going to be played turn 4 and earlier. It's just, we just could use better green specific Vegeto support and better green Goku and Vegeta cards as well. Then for yellow we had Son Goku. He was a vanilla 30,000 3-drop. This card was almost completely useless. He was a Goku GT card, so for whatever that actually made a difference. However, there are some of those skillless decks that do rely on the 3-drop skillless cards and not just the 2-drops, and I guess this could be ran in it, but I don't really see what support this is really going to bring to that particular deck, aside from it being yellow and being able to charge yellow energy. Otherwise, it doesn't really do anything at all. At least if they had made it Goku's Lineage, you could go from the 2-drop into this, have the chain stop there, have it be a vanilla battle card, and it would just be a 30,000 beat stick that at least had some form of use other than just, looking pretty in somebody's binder. The final card in the championship pack was Bardock Fully Unleashed. He was a Overrealm card, 25,000 power, and lets you warp your opponent's battle area of any cards with energy cost of 6 or more. So he was kind of like a polar opposite, or not really a polar opposite, more of like a. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It was a less OP variant than the Super Saiyan 3 Bardock we got in Cross Worlds, where that one just said, hey, take everything your opponent has and warp it. This one could only warp 6 or more, and that one, of course, cost 5 energy to play because you had to Xeno Evolve it, whereas this one was just an Overrealm card, and it didn't have, Double Strike or Crit or anything like that, so it was pretty balanced. That was the word I was looking for, and I'm so tired I couldn't even think of a simple word like that. But this is a good card. It's a good side deck card, or if you're running black, it'd be a decent main deck card as well. Especially for decks that do like to ramp up or play really big cards early on when you know their energy cost is going to be higher than their current energy. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up our review of the Ultimate Box and its implications on the meta. There was actually a good number of cards that came out of this box that were playable, similar to, just like we had a lot of cards that were playable that came in the Anniversary Box as well. I feel like some of these were a little more generic compared to what we got out of the Anniversary Box, but nonetheless, it was all a lot of great support, both to older archetypes that needed the help, and kind of gave us good support for just generic, throw it in whatever kind of deck you want to build. But let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of the Ultimate Box, what you thought of the Championship Packs, if you thought there was any ways that we can improve those, and what were the best cards from the box and from that pack in your opinion. Which cards have you had any actual beneficial experience from playing them instead of it just being kind of a cheeky little fun combo to use here and there. With that, though, we're going to go ahead and get the frig out of here, and we will see you guys in the next episode.